Welcome to another episode of the Make Mental Health Matter show. I am your host, Kelli Melissa Reinhardt, and I am very excited for my guest for today, as with, I think, every single show. But more specifically, because as you can see, Regina is here, and we're going to talk about some pretty cool things that I tend to geek out on, which is the brain. So let me share a little bit of information about Regina and why I think this conversation is going to be really cool. So, she graduated with her Master's of Science in Psychology from the University of Arizona. She currently resides in Colorado with her significant other, Brandon, and her dog, Peach. Regina went into the neurofeedback field because her grandpa passed with Alzheimer's and saw the struggle that family members go through. She loves that neurofeedback can help people going through different struggles. And in Regina's free time, she likes to enjoy all that Colorado has to offer and also enjoys being with her family and friends. So if you're listening to this on the radio, you may have heard in the last couple of episodes, we are now in studio. So we are doing the show from an in-studio location. So if you get a chance and you want to watch, go to the Make Mental Health Matter YouTube channel. It's also on Facebook or on E360 TV if you happen to be watching it live. So we're hoping that this time, based off of previous episodes, that the camera's not all wonky, but I think we got it locked in. So without further ado, and me monologuing even more, Regina, tell the audience a little bit more about yourself and your story.
Yeah, so it all, like you said, it started with my grandpa having Alzheimer's. And I was younger, I was between like middle school and high school, but just seeing, me going through it emotionally and then my family going through it too, it's just so painful and so emotional. And I remember thinking at that time, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do something that works with the brain. Like there has to be more to help people with memory loss. And so then, got out of high school, took a year off and really did some research. And I was like, okay, what's going to happen here? And then found my love for psychology and neuroscience. And at that time, neurofeedback wasn't like a huge thing. I'd say I've been in the field 5 years. So even just the 5 years that I've been in it, it's really blossomed a lot. But found it and I was like, this is phenomenal. This can help people in so many different ways and really just optimize themselves. And I've worked with a lot of clients with memory issues, and it's just so wonderful to have clients say, oh my gosh, I had a conversation with someone yesterday and I actually remembered what I wanted to tell them.
Ooh.
Yeah. So that's what I absolutely love, because that's where where this all stemmed from. And then of course, I help people in all different walks of life with everything, but memory was that big one. So now, I have clients who are diagnosed with dementia and Alzheimer's, and it won't take it away, but it can lessen the severity of the symptoms that just come with it. So it's beautiful.
Neurofeedback is something that I didn't know anything about. And then I actually have a friend who she was helping somebody who has a neurofeedback clinic. And she's like, you got to try this thing. And I'm like, I don't even understand it, but okay. So I went and did a couple sessions and I was like, I don't really know exactly, but I knew the first session that I did, I was so exhausted.
Yeah.
Like my brain, how it works is like I go, 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 go. And I know that. And it just doesn't stop a lot.
Yeah.
So the very first session, I was like, man, that was exhausting. And she's like, yeah, sometimes that happens. I'm like, oh,
yep,
okay.
Totally. It's like a workout for the brain. I always use a million analogies because neurofeedback is hard to understand. Like, what? People are always like, is this shock therapy? I'm like, oh gosh, no. But it's like going to the gym and training different muscle groups and trying to like tone up your body. We're training different areas of your brain that have, either a deficiency or too much of a brainwave in an area, and bringing it to that more normative range. And it's kind of like training different muscle groups in your brain. We're training different lobes in different areas, and it tones it up and changes those neural pathways, and that's when people start to notice differences. But the tiredness, quite normal. It's like doing a workout at the gym and being done and you're like, okay, I'm actually really tired. Your brain, yeah, I'm like really tired.
I think that was my first realization that I probably, which I don't need to go and get diagnosed with ADHD or ADD or whichever.
Yeah.
But at that moment, I was like, yeah, it made sense. And then the more, I think I did maybe 3 sessions, and the more I went, the more it felt a little bit more calm. I wasn't like as tired the next couple of times, but it is definitely, it's interesting. And I totally nerd out on the brain now, understanding a little bit more. So I think it's cool, but I do want to talk about, because I know you do brain mapping, which, and I love to have the conversations that like the harder conversations, because I have heard a lot about brain mapping and how it may or may not be beneficial. I don't know. I've just heard a lot of different things about brain mapping specifically. So can you tell us a little bit more about like, what does that mean?
Yeah, no, that's always, and that's where a lot of people get confused, because we have brain mapping and then we have the actual sessions that go along with it. So brain mapping is a QEEG. It's like a 14-letter word that I'm not going to sit here and try to say. But what it is it's picking up data from your brain. So I put a really cool cap on your head that looks like it fits kind of like a little beanie, but there's 19 different locations on it. And I go through and I put a gel in it, and it picks up your brain waves. And so I always like to say it's kind of like having a map of Colorado. You know, you can see everything. I don't know if we remember what an atlas is, you know, having all of that, but it's kind of like that, because then we record your brain waves, you know, eyes open and eyes closed, and you don't need to be in any certain symptom in order for the brain to pick up that activity. So I always use panic attacks as an example. You know, I get clients that come in, they're like, I get panic attacks, but I'm not having one right now. How are you going to see that? Well, thank goodness you're not having one right now, but our brains are beautiful in a way that they create these patterns, and that's what that brain map picks up, is patterns. So we record that, and then that tells me areas of the brain that need training, you know, areas of the brain that are deficient in some brain waves, and areas that have too much of a certain brainwave in an area. And a QEEG is not a diagnostic tool, so I can't sit here and say you have generalized anxiety, you have depression, you know, you have ADHD, all these things. But science and research is beautiful to show us that, you know, you have a little bit of this brainwave in this area, and there's too much of it, and it could be causing these XYZ kind of symptoms. So that's kind of like that's the start. You know, that's where we like to see what is going on and how can this benefit you from that. And then from there is when, you know, we dive into the sessions and we work those areas of the brain. And session by session, we're bringing the brain to a more standard norm, which I hate using those words because no one's normal. We're all weird in our own ways. But in science, we have a normative range. And so session by session, the brain gets rewarded for bringing the brain to that more normative range, which then clients start noticing, oh, I didn't have a panic attack this time when I normally do. Or my sleep last night was so much better. I felt way more rested this morning than I have. And it's little things that happen session by session. Then at the end of, let's say, said 40 sessions, the client's like, I've had people be like, Regina, I don't even remember who I was back then. Because I'm with clients for like 6 months to a year, you know, kind of dependent upon how many sessions they need. But yeah, that brain mapping is cool because people love to see what's going on in my head, you know, and it's my goal with the brain map. And then I meet with clients after and do a map review. My goal is to validate people, you know, because I get people that are like, I don't know why I do this, you know, and some people are in tears, which is understandable if you're going through certain symptoms. And they'll sit there like, oh my gosh, so I'm not crazy.
right. Or it's like, I don't know if I want to see what my brain is doing. No, you probably get those people that they're like, I do want to know, but I don't want to know, but I do. And I think so I have 2 thoughts popping in my head, but I'm going to go this way first. I think what I had heard about brain mapping is it gives you a great overview. And then with brain mapping and neurofeedback, you tend to like pinpoint. But then there's other neurofeedbacks that kind of do the whole collective brain and they don't do the pinpointing.
Yeah, so you can kind of dive in with, what areas are kind of like, what are you experiencing? What are your symptoms? And then, you can dive in and let's work this area of the brain and see how you do. Because yes, there are offices that go that route too. So kind of just dependent like what people want to offer.
Okay.
But yeah, for sure.
I mean, is there a benefit to like do a brain map and like pinpoint versus just do an overall like collective of the brain?
Yeah, I get some people that are like, you could hook me up today and I'd be fine. And then I get other people that are like, no, I want to see exactly like, because, I need to know, I want to see what it looks like before we dive in. Gotcha. It's kind of like, so my office is inside a chiropractic's office. Okay. And they always use the analogy of like, it's like before you start getting adjusted, you have that x-ray. What areas of the spine or, whatever neck need to be adjusted and then go from there. Rather, whereas he could probably just notice. Yeah. Same with the brain, I could go in and do protocols that are going to help with clients' certain symptoms, but they like to have that brain map. So it's kind of just like a little extra additive. And then at the end of the sessions, we do another brain map because we love the before and afters. We love to see the movement that occurred throughout the session. So
yeah, that's super cool. And then also, because recently I saw a video that you had put on somewhere, some social media, but they had the cap on, and it almost looked like you were like inserting in their brain. I was like, does that go in your brain? Like, but it's in the cap.
Yes.
Okay.
I always tell people it only goes as far as your shampoo goes.
Gotcha.
I'm like, I'm not a neurosurgeon. I'm not going into your head. Because whenever people see that tool, they're like,
what are you doing?
Like I've had kids like look up at me. So I always show people because I'm behind them, right? And sometimes when you're behind people, it's like, this makes me feel more anxious. Yeah. So I'll always come up to the front and be like, this is the tool I'm using. And I'll like even put it on my finger. It's a blunt syringe.
Oh,
so
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
And it needs to be that tiny though to get through those little electrode holes.
Yeah.
But I even like I've had clients where I'm like, here, you hold it, you touch it. I'll even squeeze a little bit of the gel out. You can kind of see what it feels like. And then I always tell people too, I've had 2 of these maps done. I know what it feels. I know what it feels like to have someone who has a heavy hand doing this, and I know what it feels when someone has a light hand doing this. Yeah. So you just kind of like find that middle ground. And then once I insert it into the first electrode hole, they're like, oh, this isn't bad. But I know that tool. I was like, I might be biting myself in the butt here, putting that tool in here.
I know. I was all, do I want to go? No, but that makes sense because then it like sits on the layer of like the skin layer, basically. Does it help regrow hair? Just kidding.
No, I always joke with people I'm the opposite of a hairstylist. I'm like, sorry, you're going to be leaving here with a lot of gel.
That makes sense. So make sure you go when you have time after that you can go redo your hair.
Yes,
okay.
Exactly.
I have so many questions because, again, the brain is just fascinating to me, but we're going to go to our quick first sponsored break. And then once we come back, we're going to chat even more about the brain and how fascinating it is. So we'll be right back after this quick sponsored break.
Have you ever felt completely alone?
Like your life doesn't matter.
One person dies due to suicide every 40 seconds.
You are not alone. Call the National Suicide Lifeline at 988.
Hope and recovery is possible.
1 in 8 people globally live with a mental disorder.
That's why empowering minds saves lives.
We need your help.
With only $19 a month, you help us save lives through mental health and suicide prevention education.
Scan the QR code or go to makementalhealthmatter.org to sign up as a warrior for mental health today.
Hi everyone, I am Sinead from Brador. I'm from Johannesburg, South Africa. Please join me in my Power Hour every Sunday, 12 o'clock Pacific Standard Time on E360 TV. Mwah.
Hello, this is Steve Ramona with the TV show Together We Serve, Fridays, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern on E360 TV. Together We Serve. Hello, this is Steve Ramona.
And like that, we're back. All right. If you happen to be just joining the Make Mental Health Matter show, thank you so much for tuning in, whether you are watching or you are listening. My guest today, Regina, we are having a fun conversation about the brain and neurofeedback. Also, we just talked about brain mapping and how that process works. So if you happen to be just tuning in, make sure you go back and listen to the very beginning of this. But I am, again, like, total nerd now at this point in my life with the brain and how it works and all the things, right? And I know that there's so many cool modalities that are not just, you don't have to just go into therapy. You don't have to just talk to a psychologist, counselor, whomever that person might be. There are all these different modalities now. And I know you got your psychology degree, which I'm sure is really, really helpful in what you do now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's the kind of thing where, like, there's all these different modalities and they all help in their own way, and that's where I've had people come sit in my chair and they're like, hey, I've done talk therapy for 20 years. I feel like it's done its job. What can neuro do for me? Or I've had clients do neuro and they're like, hey, I heard about EMDR, how it's really good for trauma. Like, I think I might go try that after these sessions. That's great. And I have a bunch of my colleagues who are now turned friends are therapists in different realms. And it's so cool because it's like, oh, somatic? Okay, I have a gal for that, or teens? Okay, I have a guy for that. And so it's just wonderful because it's not just one thing that's going to help with anything. It takes a world of things to do that. And that's why I love all these different modalities, because they should all be used in their own, if people feel like they need to do them.
Yeah. And I know, you were also talking, your story really is because you had a grandparent who had Alzheimer's. And I know, like, my grandpa, he had dementia. And then one of my aunts, she had Alzheimer's. And I know on my dad's side, it's been a thing. So I also spoke with a woman when I was on the TEDx stage that she talked all about Alzheimer's. So she lives with Alzheimer's, but she does a lot of different modalities to keep her wits about her. And she really talked about how it is all about the brain and training it. And she didn't like talk about neurofeedback specifically, but she talked about all the different ways that she has utilized that has been beneficial for her. So the other reason why I'm asking, or leading into a question here, I recently spoke at a church, and it was an older community, and they asked questions more centered around suicide and Alzheimer's and caregiving as centered. And one of the gentlemen, you could tell that it was a very personal story of having to take care of somebody with Alzheimer's. They also asked the question if we see higher rates of suicide with those that are struggling with Alzheimer's. Whereas I reflected onto what I know with suicide is such a complex action that when your brain is like full-blown Alzheimer's, you don't have the cognitive functions to actually take the action.
Right.
But it's the caregivers that we would be more concerned about if we're talking about suicide. But the question that I'm leading into is, with neurofeedback and Alzheimer's, of course, you said it's not going to stop it, but it can at least help or slow the progression.
Yeah, and too, like, symptoms around it. Like, one of my clients, she has dementia. And it's one of those things where she, like, knows her memory isn't great, but it's kind of like an acceptance factor of, like, okay, I know it's not great, but it gives her really bad anxiety. And so, honestly, we worked around stress regulation the first, like, 20 sessions, because if we can help regulate that, then it won't seem as stressful with it. But yeah, it's not going to bring everything back like we want it to, but it can make it a little bit better to whereas, like, oh, I remembered what I did yesterday, or that conversation I had with someone. When I first got into the field, I worked with the sweetest 93-year-old. She had Alzheimer's, and her son was like, we're really willing to do kind of whatever just to help her. So her first session, we gave her intake form, and basic information. Can you fill out your name, your birthday, address, phone number, things like that. And she was just kind of like, no, I can't do this today. Oh, okay, that's fine. That's fine. So we did about 15 sessions, and each session I would work with her with memory cards, and I'd hold up like lipstick. Well, tell me about lipstick, and I'd be like, when did you start using it? And start with like long-term memory, and then she would kind of just trail along. Oh, then when I got married, I used this color lipstick, and then my kids, now my daughter loves this. And then ask like a most recent question. Well, when was the last time you put lipstick on? And it kind of gets that memory working. So we did that every session along with the training. And then around like 15 to 20 sessions, we were like, okay, let's ask her about the intake form again. And she filled it out. She was able to fill out she knew her name, but she was able to fill out her address and her phone number and things like that. Whereas before she was like, no, this is a bit too much. So even simple things like that where that's good to know, and that's good for them to kind of feel like they have that control back again with it.
Yeah, and I'm curious, so like, because did you do a brain map before and a brain map after?
Yeah, little bit of movement. I mean, not a whole lot. And my current client right now that I have with dementia, we did before and after. So she did 40 sessions, and there was movement. Her husband was like, I don't see it. I'm like, it's here. It's here. Because whenever I do a second map, people are always like, okay, there's just a lot of colors.
Like, right.
What's happening here? And I'm like, no, let's look at it. So I will like so detailed, look at this movement here. And her brain just coming to that more normative range and just little things, being able to remember. Like now I have conversations with her and she, oh yeah, this weekend I did this and this. Whereas before she'd be like, it was just another weekend at home kind of thing. Yeah. So, yeah.
I mean, just the like adding quality of life, right? Like that's really truly what it's going to do. It's not going to change the diagnosis because I don't think there's anything that can really help Alzheimer's or dementia.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, but you would think in the technology today we would be like, rearrange some things. I don't know. No, but that's like the brain is so complex that we don't also want to go back to the days where we were giving people lobotomies. Is that what they were called? Yeah. Right. Like, take a chunk out of your brain.
Right up in that frontal cortex. I'm like,
what are we doing?
Never agree.
Yeah. Or the shock therapy. I'm like, man, we got to do better. But we are doing better now.
We are,
so,
yes.
I also reflect, and thank you for sharing. I think it's important for people to understand, like, what it can help with. And then I even shifting into like premenopause and menopause, I would assume that it is really good for that time in your life.
Oh, I love talking about females and their hormones because that's another thing too, where not only do we need neurofeedback to help us, right? We all want our mood to be more regulated. Yeah. I always reference Inside Out. We have those emotions for a reason. Yes, but sometimes we don't want to feel one more than we feel, another. And it's usually the crying. Like I had one client a few years ago. She's like, if we could just regulate my crying just a little bit. She's like, I literally cried a commercial. But not only is it working that with regulating the brain with emotion regulation, but it's also, have you gotten your hormones tested? Are you working with your doctor, functional medicine doctor? Does your body have any supplements that it needs right now to help you support throughout this? And so, I mean, I'm even a testimony to that. When I was in grad school and working full-time, I was pushing 70 hours a week. I was in adrenal fatigue. Everything was just like, I was in full-on burnout and my adrenals were just kaputs, but I did some neurofeedback myself, and I also too saw a functional medicine doctor, and it just helped greatly because it, supplements are there to supplement what your body doesn't have at that moment. And so, yeah, I mean, I even had a client the other day that was like, I think I'm in premenopause right now. I'm not 100% sure. Yeah. I was like, well, let's not self-diagnose, but I was like, maybe let's go to a doctor and get those things checked out.
Right.
But yeah, it's my favorite thing. I just had a teen start, and her mom was like, she's 13. You know what that means? I'm like, oh, you're tipping the iceberg.
Yeah, I got it. Right. Yeah. No, and that's what, because I asked that question because I'm more than sure that I am perimenopausal, but I went to my doctor and got all the tests and the blood work, and they're like, oh, you're fine. You're within like normal range. And then I was actually talking to a functional practitioner, and he said, he's like, yeah, your blood work will probably not ever like show specifically, but everything that you're reporting back to me, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I knew, because I usually only get maybe 2 migraines per year. And last year I got like 7 in a 5-month span.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And I was like, something's wrong with me. And that's when I
Yeah.
went to the doctor, and they're like, oh no, you're great, you're normal. And I'm like, am I?
7
Yeah.
migraines.
I was like, that's not normal for
Yeah.
me. So something's off. And moving forward, I mean, the brain fog, that's been my biggest. And I have always been in like tech support, or like very techy, and like my brain fires really quickly generally. But I've noticed, especially lately, I mean, not that stress helps anything,
Right.
but, and that's why when you said stress, like regulation or reduction is important. But still, I'm like, I should remember these things, and I'm not remembering them. And I'm just going to blame it on that because it's easier.
Yep. And brain fog is like the biggest thing. You know, I had one client who started about 25 sessions ago. She calls it chemo brain. She had breast cancer and, you know, got through it and everything. And she was like, brain fog is horrible.
Oh,
So she's doing it specifically for that. And she was like, Regina, I had the craziest moment. I was getting my nails done, and out of the blue, the fog just lifted. And she goes, I noticed it lasted for like 40 minutes and it felt so great. I'm like, yay, we're making movement.
Yeah.
But yeah, that brain fog is nightmare.
No fun.
No.
It is no fun. Well, we're going to go to our last quick sponsored break, but once we get back, we're going to have some more fun conversations as related to the brain, because again, I don't know about you, but I think the brain is cool. So we'll be right back after this quick sponsored break.
$1,917 people die daily from suicide globally.
I lost my middle sister, Carrie, to a completed suicide on February 20th, 2017.
How does Kelli, host of the Make Mental Health Matter show, impact lives?
Number 1. Awareness.
My story, all over it, isn't unique. I am a domestic violence survivor and a recovering addict. For 14 years, I was in active addiction, and because of Kelli and the work that she does and the opportunity to have my voice heard, I was able to stay clean and sober and have hit a year. I'm still here, and if it wasn't for Kelli answering my call the day that I thought I was going to take my life.
2. Conversation.
I'm curious, and I know that I've heard a lot in the BIPOC community, it is very hush-hush. It's like one of those things that you don't talk about. Like, you literally feel like it's not a conversation you can have. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
First, shout out to Kelli, because I'm glad that she asked the question. I researched you before I went on your show, and I saw how real and authentic you were. And I just appreciate the question, because it is different, and we have to have tough, courageous conversations. So yes, I always say I'm a triple diversity threat. I'm a Black woman with multiple disabilities. Now, I'm not really a threat, but to other people, I may be, because people fear the unknown and what they're uncomfortable with.
Number 3. Education.
Kelli's passionate commitment to mental health awareness is a beautiful thing. It's clear in her social media posts, it's clear in the resources that she puts together, in the activities that she provides, her collaboration with organizations, and the consistent way that she continues to deliver a message, encouraging people to understand that they can share openly and to break the stigma around mental health. Kelli's topics cover children and adults, talk about things that we can do as a community, things that we can do individually, and her website is packed with information and resources and all kinds of contacts that you can use to reach out, whether you're dealing with something yourself or you're looking to help somebody else who is struggling. I encourage you to check it out.
1,000.
And like that, we're back. If you happen to be just joining the Make Mental Health Matter show, go back and make sure you watch or listen to the very first of this. My guest today, Regina, and we are having a wonderful conversation about the brain, how neurofeedback can help specifically, whether you are somebody who might have a loved one, or maybe you are suffering with Alzheimer's or dementia, and or we were just talking about premenopause and menopause and women's hormones, which is one of those topics that sometimes I feel like we don't talk about enough.
Right.
But it's really important. And I also had a conversation with a woman that I didn't think about it, but I know I talk a lot of course, about my sister's story and suicide. And I didn't even think about like menopause and how our hormones are so unbalanced that we can even shift into having suicidal ideation, and almost to the point, well, not almost, but I know this person, they had attempted because of the imbalance of hormones in their body during menopause. And she even said, she's like, I hadn't ever had those thoughts before in my life. And then when she started to go get like replacement hormones, then she came out of, well, after the attempt, right? They were like, oh, wow, this is the reason is because of menopause and all the hormone imbalance. And I don't know why I never thought of that before, but it's so true. You were saying adrenal failure or just fatigue. Talk more about that, because I'm curious, like, what is that?
Well, because I was in burnout, so was my nervous system. So it was sad. And it was just like a constant, you honestly don't you don't know you're in it. Right. And the doc I was seeing, she was like, Regina, you need to do something. And then at that same time, I also did another brain map. And my friend, who's also my mentor, she was like, Regina, if I didn't know you, this brain map looks like a retired CEO or someone with an autoimmune. And I was like, okay, so we need to do something. So I got on a couple different supplements just to kind of help support my hormones, but I also too had to make lifestyle changes. Now I couldn't drop school, right? I had to finish that. Luckily it was only 2 years, and I couldn't drop work. And at that time I was working at another neurofeedback center, and I was a clinical director, and I was overseeing clinicians, and we saw around like 250 clients a week. So we had a really good load, and it was just busy. My life was busy. And so my friend was like, just take 20 minutes and like watch a TV show. And I was like, oh, sure.
Okay.
So I tried it one night, and I was sitting there watching the TV, and I'm like, I could be writing my essay. I could be listening to a lecture, like thinking of everything. But then that's when like I had to really like, okay, Regina, you are only, I was probably like 30. You're still fairly young. You need to do something and like change so that you feel better. Because I ended up getting shingles.
Wow.
Which
At
really
30?
is unheard of. I thought I was having a heart attack, and I took myself to the ER, and she was like, I'm not a dermatologist, but I'm pretty sure you have shingles. And that was my wake up call. I said, okay, we have to do something. So I started training neuro a little bit more, kind of like help support my brain. Adrenals, got on my supplements, and really tried to make those breaks just to like, okay, yes, I have school. Yes, I have work. They can wait for 20, 30 minutes. So implementing that, changing my sleep routine, my sleep schedule, like it took a while too. It's not something that happens overnight, which is what a lot of people think it is, and that's with neuro too. With neurofeedback, it's not an overnight quick fix. We're changing these neural pathways in the brain, and that takes time. It's like teaching an old dog new tricks,
Yes.
So, with support of neurofeedback, support of my doctor, and myself, I was like, okay, we're going to do this. And I was actually just thinking the other day, I was like, we've made it really far, pat on the back. Because it's a lot, and now I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, like you can even see it in photos where it's like, they call it the cortisol face now, where it's like puffy, and you notice just those little things, and just how changing little things in your lifestyle can help you so much with that. And so now I coach my clients through that too. Like I have a client right now who's in burnout. I'm like, you probably don't feel it because your brain's just go, go, go. I was like, well, let's start talking about it. So
yeah, I'm like, I think I need to come in for some but it's like life just goes, right? Like I know enough about myself that my coping mechanism is just keep going.
Yep.
And it's not the just keep swimming, right? Like you have to also balance things in your life. And I play Monopoly Go, which is like my husband's like, you always are playing the game in bed. And I'm like, yeah, but that's I don't know why. It's just the thing at the end of the day that I don't have to think very hard. Like I can just it auto rolls for me. So I don't even have to press the button. I'm like, I just auto roll and it helps calm my brain, which is kind of weird, but good, because otherwise I'd be the same place as I'm like, oh, I could be doing this, or oh, I could be doing that or doing that. And I have had to become much more structured, I guess you could say, with my boundaries and making sure that I follow those. And I've had people in the past say boundaries don't work, or they say that like they figure that mental health or people in the mental health space should be working all the time. But it's like we also have to be able to take care of ourselves to take care of others. And I oftentimes, even when I'm on stage, I tell people, I could tell you till I'm blue in the face how you should take care of yourself, but I forget myself.
Yes.
And that's not fair.
Right. That is so important. One of my friends who's a therapist, she's been a therapist, I think, for about like 20 years, but she, when I was in the brunt of it, she was like, Regina, you need to take 2 weeks off work. I was like, can't do that. How do I do that? I was like, I can give you a couple days.
Right.
And she goes, no, there's research out there that if you're in the mental health field, you need to take more than 5 days off because, well, really in any field too, right? You can be in any field, but you need to take more than 5 days off because your body then starts to decompress. Like I think she said like around that 5th day. And so I went to Mexico, like, I don't know, a year later or something. And we were there for 7 days.
Nice.
By like the 5th day, I was like, oh,
yeah, okay, I
this
don't
is
want to go
nice.
home.
Yeah. But it's so true because that's, I now, because I've been through all of that, I try to take off like, and I should take off more, but I try to take off like 1 day every couple months. Just do what I want to do, right? One of my friends calls it a do nothing day. But that do nothing day can be whatever you want. If you want to schedule a facial, a massage, whatever, or if you want to sit at home and just hang with your dog.
Literally do nothing.
Yes. But yes, as mental health advocates, we have to take care of ourselves in order to take care of other people. And I am all for that now. Because yes, when you're taking care of like clients, like and guiding them through this journey, I have to be good as well to guide you through that. So I'm all for that.
I love that. I'm gonna try sometime implement the 5 days. I like that rule. Yeah. But it's true. There was at one point on my calendar on a Sunday, I put do nothing. I literally, and my husband was like, what? And I was like, I'm not doing anything.
Yes.
I'm not going for a walk. I'm literally going to sit on the couch. And interestingly enough, that was a point my body actually shut down that day. It was one of those moments that like I was just going. And I had put do nothing. And my body was like, yep, you're literally doing nothing. Yep. And I slept almost the whole day, which I never, ever do. Yeah. My body was like, screw you. You're sitting down and not doing anything. And I remember that moment. I was like, whoa, like I've never in my lifetime up till this point, in 44 years, ever gotten to the point that my body just shuts down. And it was one of those days that my body was like, nope, you're not doing anything. So I think it's so important, but also the way that we can help ourselves through all kinds of modalities like neurofeedback to not have the shutdown days, but also be aware of if it is coming and how we can shift into a better space versus that just like full shutdown.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's, it's a learning curve for me still, because I'll be like 3 months, like even what month are we in now? April. I was like, oh my gosh, I called my sister and I was like, I'm exhausted. And she goes, well, when's your next day off work? I said, not until June. She's all Regina. But yeah, your body just feels it, especially, and you go, 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 because that's just what we do. And I always tell clients too, we're in a really fast-paced society that you're always on to the next thing. If you're relaxing, don't relax. Self-care, although I feel like people are getting more and more into that self-care realm where we do need to take care of ourselves. So,
well, and I oftentimes, like, I also explain it as self-love, right? Like loving ourselves, because we have to love ourselves in order to love other people. But it is, I also reflect on all the other countries. I mean, Europe, they take months off, right?
Yeah.
It's their holiday and everybody gets a month off. And yeah, I'm like, okay, how do we get that in the USA? Because we're just going, and we never stop to just take those moments.
Yeah.
And there are times in my life where I have to start recognizing, like, when I'm just blowing by something, but then something catches my eye and I'm like, oh, that's right. Like, it's a reminder of myself of like, slow down and notice the things. Because time is precious and we just never know what's going to happen tomorrow or the next hour or the next hour. And when we're constantly going, it doesn't give any space for us to just be.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. One of my friends, he loves to travel over to Europe all the time. And he's always like, life is just so different out there. And he was thinking about moving out there. And we were like, it's going to be really change of pace for you, you know, but he's staying here in the States. But yeah, it's way different. And that's where I'm like, it's okay. It's okay to not work 12 hours a day, you know, and it's okay to take a lunch break. You need to eat. You need to eat breakfast. Like, you need to give your body nutrients. And so,
yeah, I had somebody, they're like, you just schedule it on your calendar. I was like, that's probably a good idea for me, because I also use Calendly, so people can just book at certain times. I'm like, I should probably block out certain times. But yeah, no, I just think, I mean, the brain is fascinating overall, and how I mean, I could totally go in a whole nother direction too, is, I mean, how powerful the brain is. And when we're not taking care of ourselves, we're not taking care of our brain, and we're really hyper focusing on the things that may or may not be important.
Right.
I think it's important for us to remember that there are other things that we can do that will strengthen our brain, but then also create better sleep patterns. If you're needing to be more calm, or there's lots of different reasons why people would go. And I mean, just in general, I think neurofeedback is good.
Yeah. Yeah. It's wonderful. It's helped me greatly with sleep and regulating anxiety, you know, because that happens. You know, there's always things that are going to be stressful or anxiety ridden. And that's what I always tell clients. Like, this isn't going to take away stress or anxiety. It's just going to help your brain regulate it, create more flexibility, so it's not feeling like it's like stuck on that thought or constantly stuck in the pattern of getting panic attacks. And it's amazing when you start to notice that, like, oh, I'm not sitting here ruminating on that like I used to, you know? And so it's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Yeah. And I'm sure, I mean, it reconnects all of the what are the names?
Neural pathways.
Neural pathways. Thank you. I was like, it's got neuro in it.
In the brain.
Right. But I mean, oftentimes, like, our brain, when we're not using certain parts of our brain, or we have a trauma, so like concussions or something else, like we lose those neural pathways, and neurofeedback can help reconnect those.
Yeah, and like, especially with trauma, you know, there's a lot of clients that come in for trauma, and those are the clients too. I've had clients be like, oh yeah, I went and did EMDR, which is great. It's really intense. Well, some clients have mentioned the experience is intense.
Yeah.
But yeah, neurofeedback helps the brain kind of like process through it. And like, I had one client last year who came in specifically for triggers from her traumas. And she had people in her life that weren't going to go away, but she was like, how can I regulate it a little bit better? And so it's essentially, you know, we're just creating those new neural pathways in the brain to where it doesn't feel like it needs to be stuck in that emotion. Because even too with trauma, sometimes people even have that like smell that comes back with a certain situation.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it's really specific with that. But yeah, it just helps regulate the brain more so it doesn't feel like it's like sitting in it. And it makes it way better for clients with that.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, just knowing, because I think in the past we have said that the brain, we can't do much with it, right? Like we assumed that like once we lost memories, they were gone. Or if
Right.
we, as we get older, the brain tends to disintegrate, I guess is the
Right,
right
yeah,
word.
yeah.
But now we know that that's not true.
Yeah.
It actually, it's so powerful. And I mean, it runs our whole entire body.
Yep.
So there are ways that we can reconnect
Mhm.
and we can train it and make
Mhm.
sure that we are utilizing the power of our brain.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. One of my clients is a memory doctor, and he said everyone is worried about losing their memory and their mind. And he said the best thing you can do for yourself is change up your routine. He said, you know, as we get older, we retire. You know, we're not having that job because when you go to a job or you're doing things, you're talking to people. You know, you're creating those new neuronal activity pathways and everything. And he said, you know, take a different way to the grocery store. Brush your teeth with your non-dominant hand. Even when putting your pants on, use your other leg. Be careful if you have an electric toothbrush.
You're like, I tried that.
I tried. But he said little things like that just kind of change up your just your normal routine. And yes, puzzles and everything like that are good, but like some of my clients who are older, they're part of like social groups. Like one of my clients, I think she plays like Bunko or something, you know, but just things like that kind of just help as we age. And it doesn't start when we hit, you know, 50, 60. It starts when we're like 20s, 30s too.
Yeah.
So it's important.
Well, because the brain fully develops and then it starts disintegrating. That's not the right word. What is
No.
I'm like, it starts.
We just get into
whatever
our
way it
habits that
goes.
can kind of make it not as great for us.
Right. Yeah, I heard more recently that it's like because your brain doesn't fully develop till 25, 28 now.
Yeah.
And then from that point, then it starts to, I don't know what the word is that I'm trying to pick the word, but it doesn't grow anymore. It actually goes the opposite way. So it's important once it's fully developed that we continue to strengthen it and we continue to train it and make sure that we're utilizing all the connections that are there if they're not reconnect them some way.
Yep. That's why I always say like kids, it's perfect for them. You know, I usually don't train below 8 because it's just harder for them to sit there. But I have a 5-year-old right now. Well, no, she's 6 now. Okay. But she's the cutest little button. She, you know, and it's just helping development and helping, you know, them to like just create good patterns and habits for themselves.
Yeah.
Because it's important starting at that age, you know. And even too, like my clients in their preteens and teens, you know, setting those standards.
Everything's happening.
Yeah.
You got all the hormones, you got all the things happening. Yeah. But I would imagine that it would be a really good place, especially during that time.
Yes. Yeah. And I love working with kids too. They're just so much fun and so sassy.
Right. You're like, oh, well, this is helping you a little bit more than I thought it would. No. Well, I love this conversation, and I could probably talk about the brain for hours and hours and hours. I want you to share with the audience a little bit about how they can find you if they want to work with you and what that whole process looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. I do have an Instagram. It's under Meridian_neuro. I do have a website, but right now it's under construction, so we're still working. But my company is Meridian Neuro. I'd say just Instagram is probably going to be the best way. I also do have a LinkedIn, which is just under Regina Italiano. So those are kind of the best ways to reach out.
Will you spell, for the people that are listening, spell Meridian?
Oh, yeah. It's MERIDIAN.
And then underscore
neuro, NEURO.
Perfect. Yeah. Yes. So those of you that are listening, Meridian_neuro, you can find it across the socials.
Yep. Socials, Facebook, Instagram. And then you can find me on LinkedIn. I think I do have Meridian Neuro on that. I've been going through and updating everything.
Right. I know. It's all the places, right? If not, you can also look in the show notes and we'll have all your links there anyways.
Yeah.
But so couple just wrap ups. Neurofeedback is really good for
everything. I always joke, if you have a brain, it's perfect. It's great for optimizing it. And we can optimize it in many ways: stress, mood, behavior, focus, motivation, sleep. Sleep is a big one. And even if a client doesn't think they need to work on sleep, we need to work on sleep. But just helping support anyone. Even like in the beginning of my career, I worked with NFL players. Peak performance, what's keeping you from playing your best, So that, and also too, concussions, strokes, TBIs, traumatic brain injuries, really anything. I've seen a lot of people with concussions, and it just kind of helps the brain get back and make it more efficient. So yeah, really anything. I've even helped a sweet lady with handwriting.
Ooh.
Yep, improve her handwriting. So anything and everything.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And any final words that you want to share with the audience?
Your brain, you matter and your brain matters as well too. Don't think that you can't improve if you want to improve, you can improve. And I just think it's so important, and we are important, right? And like we were talking about earlier, self-care and self-love is so important. So, and I always tell people that they're loved because they are. And that's important to know.
I love that.
Yeah.
So if you want to learn more about neurofeedback, specifically around brain mapping and how you can work with certain parts of your brain, obviously Regina is in Colorado, but there are lots of other across the country, across the world, that also do neurofeedback. So if you're curious, I would highly recommend that you check it out. I also highly recommend that you check out next week's episode, because I'm going to have another incredible guest that will share their experience, their story, and make sure you tune in, whether you're listening or watching, to the Make Mental Health Matter show. We go live every single Monday at 5 p.m. on E360 TV, or you can listen on Dream Vision 7 Radio at 5 a.m. or 5 p.m. Mountain Time by simply saying, "Alexa, play Dream Vision 7 Radio." No matter what, I hope you have an incredible day, and I will see you next time. Bye, y'all.
Have you ever felt completely alone?
Like your life doesn't matter.
One person dies due to suicide every 40 seconds.
You are not alone. Call the National Suicide Lifeline at 988.
Hope and recovery is